Adonis vasisivtachu v'yagi tilsecha lasas nachas ruach le'atzrenu. So once again, it's Monday night, and we have the incredible privilege of sitting down with another really inspiring personality, teacher of Torah, and it's my incredible honor and privilege to introduce Yitzchok Friedman, who's a second grade Rebbe at Yeshiva of South Shore and the co-director of Kol HaTorah Kula, as well as is on the autism spectrum. He's going to share both his journey and a little bit of chizuk with us. And as he says, and as was on the flyer for this week, it's all about not letting my label of autism get ahead of me. I work in a special needs class at South Shore and inspire those who are on the spectrum and show them that they too can be successful. So without further ado, I want to turn over the floor to Rabbi Yitzchok.
Thank you. So we'll make do with what we have, and if I have to join on my phone, I'll switch over. Just bear with me. All right, so this will get started like this. All right, seems to be a good connection for right now. All right, so thank you, Kyle. Kyle has been an amazing inspiration to everyone. So I'm not too public about my story. I think this is actually the first time I am publicizing it, so just bear with me if I am rambling on. But I realized through Kyle and through other people who have unique and different situations that they were finding themselves out there. Just very inspirational to everyone. And in a form like this, I felt that it was only fair for me to share a little bit of a different take and inspirational chizuk with everyone. So I'm from Rockland, New York, home of many philosophers. Well, not many, it's just two. Well, one, Yaakov Klein, is also from Rockaway. So my upbringing was, I would say, very different than a lot of you here. So the one who has the most similar upbringing, I would say, is Kyle, where you're going through a lot of challenges, a lot of differences. When everyone else was playing in the snow, was me and my dad talking about a career path. So very different childhood. It was from day one really discussing what path, what roads would be taken. A pure leader when I was in 9-10 years old. As soon as I could talk, was different at the table and stuff like that. So it was definitely something that did not happen overnight. As a lot of challenges are. Something that I did notice, and this is really the sub paragraph. Within one session, I know Kyle starts to share with that pasuk, which means that Hashem, please give me the right words to say. Now, one answer heard from Rav Penner is we say this because we're literally saying an outcry to God, give me the right words to say to you. So I'm going to borrow the same outcry and say, Hashem, please give me the correct words to say to everyone here. So not letting labels define you. Everyone has a different struggle, and if you don't, you probably have the most struggles out of anyone. Someone says you're a perfect person, you're not. The only one as we know is the one above. So to give a short synopsis, the spectrum is a spectrum of differences. There's high functioning, there's low functioning, there's mid functioning. It's different sub diseases on the spectrum as well. Now I don't want to say there's more thought processes, ADD, ADHD, there's a lot of different diagnoses as well. So the problem is that there is a misnomer, which is that everyone is on, once you have a certain label, everyone is on the same label. And it's very frustrating when you get bar mitzvah and you are able to get through davening and other challenges like that, where the rabbi turns to you and starts comparing you to, not on purpose, but because he just didn't know better. When a rabbi or a community leader will start comparing you to someone who is a shota, not on purpose, but because their image might be of one who is very low functioning, of one who could barely go through words, and as such, it is very, I would say, difficult. It's the right word. It requires a lot of emunah. It requires a lot of davening and crying out to Hashem, and Hashem somehow gives everyone the journey to inspire everyone if they allow themselves to do so. So I would say part of this presentation is that Hashem is within every one of us, and that sometimes we have challenges, difficult situations, and I'm sure everyone here does. I'm sure everyone here, it's not an easy situation, and you just have to use something within yourself. So one of the things is taking a disability and making it into an ability. It's something I did. If you have something that might be different, use it to your approach. I work with special needs students who are growing up the same way I am, who I think all of them are pretty much high functioning. And I kind of use my own experience that I'm able to understand a lot of what is going on, a lot of these struggles, a lot of the not knowing, a lot of the behavior, a lot of the things that I don't know. Because I'm a human and my experience can only carry so much. And no one person is the same. And everyone has their own different strands, which is life too. No one person is the same. You see two Jews, two opinions. Or two or more opinions. I forgot the exact phrase. So no person is the same. Every person has their own ability to bring to the table. And pretty much inspire everybody. So different challenges. I'm sure a lot of questions that will come later on would be a bit challenges. So I'll try to run through as much as I can. But feel free to ask after if there are any details that you want to know more of, because I'm basically going to do a run through so we cover everything. So I did not speak until I was 3 years old, which of course causes language delays. And as such, the brain is a little bit malfunctioned. That's the way spectrum really works, that the brain is wired differently. And as such, I don't like calling it a disability per se, but that is what people call it. It is a different ability, and it is just that the brain is rewired a little bit differently. It's, as I would say, there's a example given about a foundation. Was even sort of kind of specified with David, not the Shlomo. And Shlomo built the base on it. That's because a foundation is everything. If you don't have a rock solid foundation, you're not going to get anywhere in life. Anywhere. I'm very musical. If you don't have the right chord or you don't have the right drum beat, it's going to sound a little off. So the average ear might sound the same, but it may sound a little off. Sometimes you have to use that as a feature. There's a story told which is famous about Yitzchok, who was a violinist. He had trouble walking, and one of the violin strings broke, and he just continued playing like nothing happened. And as you said, the show must go on, and really that's everyone. Hashem makes everyone the way that they're supposed to be wired. And as such, everyone does have their abilities and their talents. And I will say that my struggles were definitely there. I have a terrible handwriting. So I was never going to write. And my doctor basically, and doctors have a terrible handwriting. I think my handwriting is right over there on the same level as the doctors, if not a little bit worse. He takes me, my other hand, and he says, yeah, you could write. You could read. Don't let these, I don't want to use the word dumb, but don't let these educators make their analysis on you. And, you know, of course, I had very, very supportive parents, very supportive brother and sister. And, you know, everyone is wired correctly because they're wired by God. Everyone is wired the way that you're supposed to be wired. I would say the biggest issues that I had was bullying. You know, when you're in a special needs class growing up, that happens a lot. Especially when you are very smart and intelligent, that definitely adds to the wonderful praise. Not really. So that causes more depression to be in a already delicate situation. And I was in 8th grade already, so my parents were like, you're just going to finish the year and then we're getting you out of here. You're not going to go for high school. I'm not going to say which school I was in. It's actually a very prominent yeshiva. let's just say I was in a co-ed school before transferring. I'll say I was in Darkhay, great school. I was in YCQ beforehand. So you can imagine the going from one to the other. Difference is, I have a cousin that did the transfer also. Josh Friedman, he actually runs Promoting Care. He is someone who I've had a lot of arguments with Shin Shemaim. He's a great individual. He's amazing. Definitely mastered. He made the switch from MTA to Yesota. The difference is he actually wanted to make that switch. And therefore, if you want to make a certain change, you're going to be more determined to make that change. I didn't have a choice. We moved out here knowing nothing about the local schools, and this was the school that was getting the most praise. My brothers actually ended up in South Shore, which is where I now work. Very, very more, I would say, what they would call private school, very open-minded society, and it's definitely a great place. So 2 years ago, I started as a video editor for Sparks and Seconds, which I am on and off with. And one day I get a text from Shlomo Hirsch, who is unbelievable individual. It's like, okay, so you want to join Spreading Torah together? I'm like, sure. And we started getting content. At that time, they were audio only. We're now almost completely on video. I think we were 60 a week video and 1 day a week audio, trying to become 7 days a week video. And inspiring the world. And one of the things that came to this was getting to know different personalities. And one that I really became close to was Rev Ephraim Goldberg. And he was actually the first, I would say, rabbi that I really opened up to knowingly. And he was like, gotta throw this out there. And this is like a year and a half ago. I'm like, I am not ready to share my personal struggles with the world, etc., back and forth. Comes 2 months ago, speaking to Rabbi Josh Brody, who I know Kyle had on, wonderful man. He's like, dude, get this out. I'm like, fine. So I made a video 2 months ago on my Facebook. Did not get a lot of exposure. Friend and Sarah from Goldberg shared it, and a lot of the BRS population, I would say, saw it. And it was really my first, I would say, putting myself out there in a vulnerable moment. And one of the things that made that decision was that people aren't going to be judgmental. People aren't going to be picky. And if they are, you already dealt with that. So, like I said, a rock solid foundation is everything. Judaism, if you have the foundation, if you want to do something, obviously foundation is important, but then there's the wanting to do something. I grew up in I would say, a more Chavetz Chaim type household, which is basically, I would say, more towards black hat, but in a prior situation, open-minded environment. And so there were certain things I didn't want to do. Wearing a hat, I decided to do later on because I chose to do so. And I think that's part of the connection with Hashem, that if you're truthful and honest with yourself, and if you want to do something, you're going to do it. Yeah, I was training to be a teacher and a study of Torah my whole life. If this is something I didn't want to do, then it wouldn't go anywhere. I didn't want to spread Torah, no matter how much my parents were pushing me. I could have dropped the bomb right there, and the pin would have went off on the grenade, and it would have been over. So, like everything in life, something that you want to do, that you want to get accomplished, will only be accomplished if you're out. Rabbi Jabal Shir of Dili Amuna, one of his shiarim, he said that Hashem is like a contractor. In what way? Hashem makes a blueprint to our life, but he's also a contractor and the master builder. Usually there's two separate people. So in our blueprints, it's like sometimes, we cry out to God, I want a PlayStation or whatever you want at the moment. And you don't get it. And you're like, God, why? Maybe he didn't want to give it to you. And one of my cries, I see my good chaver and Yedid Zev Nefesh joined, former neighbor of mine, and someone who definitely was a supportive friend throughout all this. Glad you're here. So one of the things that you have to know that Hashem is the builder, contractor. He's basically an all-in-one, and that's not something we could possibly do. And as such, everyone has to play the role. Everyone has to play their instrument. You can have 399 violinists and 50 drum players. So if you're missing that 400 violinists, it's not going to sound as good. Missing that 50th drummer, that band is going to be missing a beat. So as such, everyone has their role to play. Everyone has their role in Judaism to spread Torah, and there isn't really an excuse. If you're good with graphic design, I know our Robert's on it. If you're good with graphic design, go into graphic design. Yep, go into graphic design. If you're into go into graphic design, something else that could help a business that way. If you're into talking, inspire others, give, it doesn't have to be like a big cover, or just, hey, I came up with some thoughts in Torah, I want to share it with you. Like, there is never an excuse, regardless. It says that one who is a student must become a teacher. And what exactly does that mean? Does it mean that everyone has to be a pulpit rabbi? No, it means that everyone has an obligation to inspire one other soul. When we are given a certain knowledge and a certain piece, you're required to give to someone else. As such, that's basically what I will say. But I will also say is that in general, when you're in a journey and you're in a situation, davening is the best thing. And I know that people generally turn to, I'm not praying to God today. That is the biggest mistake, that's the biggest misnomer that anybody could make. I could go on and on and on about this, but I do want to get to questions eventually, and I don't want to scare anyone off. So what I will say is that we all have a certain spark within us that can help spread Torah with others, that can help share Torah with others, and we don't really have an excuse. There's one more story that I will conclude with Rabbi Mayor Friedman, who is someone who gives a lot of shiurim on college campuses. One of the things that he said is that Chabad does not have a what's the term? Chabad does not have a ownership of tefillin. Tefillin is every one of us. It belongs to every one of us. What does that mean? He was one time one of the campuses he would go to at one point with Syracuse. He would bring his towels and tefillin with him, and you'd have him tefillin. I think it was like at 10 o'clock in the morning. Tell them to put on tefillin. Tell them to daven. One of the things he said was Shema, and these are guys that really didn't have an exposure, and he ended up getting them their own tefillin and whatnot. And his phrase was always, Chabad does not have a monopoly over tefillin. And what that means is that every one of us, that's your skill. If your skill is going over to someone and say, hey, did you put on tefillin today? During this, especially when you're wearing a yarmulke and you're going to Brooklyn Shabbos and you're asked, hey, did you put on tefillin today? It's like, yeah, no, put it on Sunday without you. But sometimes it is an inspiring thing, especially if you know a situation like this rabbi knew that there was a given situation that people, what's the right term for that, people will take full advantage of. So I'm going to open the floor for questions. I don't know how exactly that works. I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Yeah, so if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to raise your hand, raise your virtual hand, message it in the chat. If not, before we do that, I just want to touch on a few things you said, because really they were profound statements that I think we should definitely be thinking about unpacking more. Firstly, just the whole concept that everyone has their own challenges, their own struggles, their own limitations. And if you think you don't, then that might be your challenge in and of itself. But everyone has something. So that's the first point that I think should definitely be thought about and discussed. And then the second point that you just sort of closed out with is the fact that we all have our mark to make doing something. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the thing that our parents wanted us to do, or it's going to be the thing that we thought we were always going to end up doing, but it's the thing that we know deep down that's what we should be doing. And I think that that's also crucial to understand, that we don't have to be pulpit rabbis and we don't have to be teachers in a school, or we don't have to. If you are, that's great, and I think that's what Yitzchok's doing, and that's what my plan is. But that's not for everyone, and so I think that those two messages, if we take away anything from that, that's definitely a good place to start. And if anyone has any questions, the floor is definitely open. Marty?
Hi, Rabbi. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate giving us a story.
Thank
I was
you.
through all the struggles you went through, like through childhood, you're saying like a little bit how it was a little harder for you socially with like people bullying. How did you always keep a muna and say, like, you know what, like Hashem's here, Hashem's, you know, with me? And
I would say music. Music is definitely a powerful thing. I would just like write down different lyrics and kind of like make a tune out of it, even if it was like the stupidest little thing. Music, they say, is the language of the soul. Music is something that can always put you in a good mood. So I would say definitely music. And I would say the second thing, although cliche, is comedy. There are some clean comedians out there that are just fun to listen to. Recently, I've actually been turning to Behind the Beam a lot as a subcategory of music. I mean, Rabbi Brody doesn't get enough share time, as Kyle said, but Rabbi Goldberg definitely knows how to put on a good show. So, yeah, I would say music throughout my childhood is definitely something that pushed me through it.
Absolutely, and thank you to Rabashi Bloom, who shared this earlier today, because I actually saw, quoted in the name of the Ruzhner Rebbe, Rabbi Solo Ruzhin Chusyagen Aleinu, who said that Ein kmo kocho shel nigun sheyachal l'salik min ha'adam kol minei mrirus, that there's nothing like a melody, like the power of song, that can take a person out of sort of their bitterness, out of their struggles. And the Eish Kodesh, the PSS Rebbe's Chusyagen Aleinu and Sav Vizirus, in the 36th diary entry writes, Ha'adam tzarich lasos la'atma sulemes la'alos aledehem lif'amim hashemayma, hanigun hu echan hasulamus, that a person has to make this ladder to keep ascending, to go higher and higher, to reach heaven. And that song, that music is a part of that can be the ladder that lets us go higher and higher. So I think that, as you said, music is definitely a solution. I mean, it's not the only solution, but if it works, go for it, because that's definitely a powerful tool that we as a Jewish people have used since the time of David HaMelech, and really since the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim.
So Ari, I'll get to your question in a minute. Yeah, it is great working with you. Also, Ari's actually a tremendous, amazing graphic designer. So yeah. But just to touch on what you said, she had a Hasidic statement. So I'm actually gonna, I don't want to say battle, but I have in front of me Ref Cook in Olat Riot. I just need to get the exact phrase because I don't want to mess it up. Shlomo Katz recently gave a share on Ref Cook a few months ago. And Ref Cook says that there's a song within oneself. Everything one is spiritual satisfaction within one is whole, which means that everyone has their own song or their own instrument to play. And then there's a song of the nation, that everyone has their own piece. At a time of a global pandemic, everyone is responsible to sing a song of self. Hillel said, it's not for myself, who will be for me? Well, Asher Amos said, it's not now then when. So we definitely have our own instrument, but it's also our own song of self, our own image, our own strength. It's really just adding to a whole orchestra called Klaisa, called the Hashem's Orchestra. In what way, which way, as working for a warrant organization called Cause affected it? It affected me very much. I would say that studying Torah and getting to speak to certain Rebbeim who are, I would say, more open-minded, and some who, there's two in particular I opened up to. The second one, who is no longer here, of facts, was someone who I really took upon myself as I don't want to say personal teacher, but we had email conversations going back and forth. In fact, we actually have a bunch of clips from him that towards the end they wanted us to share. And he was just someone who also had his own struggle. He was about Shuva. He's a student in Cambridge and then decided to become about Shuva. Cambridge is basically like the Harvard in England. So I would say that's really what inspired me the most, hearing that it might be a different situation. There are other people who struggle too, and you're not really alone. That really, really helped me. Especially when someone like Eros Sachs, who was a huge personality, and definitely left his mark in Yiddishkeit on the world. Definitely hearing that, yeah, he wasn't religious until 19 years old, and yet he made his complete mark on Yiddishkeit. I mean, I can't imagine Judaism, a Torah today without all of the different Psalm and all the different works of Sachs. So I would say that getting to know different personalities and kind of would definitely help. And I would say that I have a certain strength of talking to people. Even though in person I was always socially awkward, but when you're behind a screen, you actually find the right words to say to people. No, when you're just typing, they say you could be very warm in text, then you could be very socially awkward. I would say that's my personal situation. And so, yeah, definitely helps a lot. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, just to go back to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, it's going to be days, if not weeks, if not months, if not years, if not decades, if not even centuries, till we fully realize and appreciate the magnitude of what Rabbi Jonathan Sachs did, not simply to the Orthodox or even to the Jewish world, but really to the world at large. I mean, I've given a presentation now on Rabbi Sachs, and there's a group at my school that tries to talk about different aspects of Rabbi Sachs, but nothing will probably be as more profound than anything of that Rabbi Sachs actually taught than reading some of the comments under the clips from his funeral, and to see people from India, from Indonesia, from Nepal, from the UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, from Canada, from the US. Many of these people who may not even be Jewish, but they all felt such a profound level of comfort and connection to Rabbi Sachs, which I thought was truly remarkable. And I know for me, Rabbi Sachs' death had a huge impact sort of on this year. And another day on the calendar that was really difficult for me was the day that the Brisker Rosh Yeshiva passed away, along with Rabbi Yitzchok Shiner, Zatzal, the Rosh Yeshiva's Kamenetz, and Rabbi Abraham Joshua Twersky, Zchus Yagin Aleinu. And to me, that was a tough day, because both Rabbi Shiner, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Kamenetz, who literally restored it, the legendary yeshiva, to what it was, at least a sliver of what it was before the war. He went to public school as a child. And same with Rabbi Twersky, who wrote over 60 books, so these characters are mind-blowing, and these personalities are incredible. And thank God that through this class and through other opportunities, and the internet has been a great democratizer for this, but we have the ability to interact with people who are really out there changing the face of the Jewish world and the world at large.
Yeah, 100%. I would say that the one who really did it before, one of the rebbeim that I had in high school, he was Rabbi Isaac. He was a son-in-law of R.A. Kaplan, who is also a huge personality who I don't think even today we fully understand what he did. I mean, he was nifter at 50 years old, and he converted to Judaism at age 22. So think about the lifespan not converted, he became about age 22. And think about the lifespan, 22 to 50, and how much he really did, the whole tour anthology. And the stories that his son-in-law used to tell, Shlita, is that Eric Kaplan was trying to get the tour for us for the first time, and he was like, I'm done. And he booked a train ticket for 6 o'clock in the morning. He wanted to leave, unannounced, with nobody saying that he was leaving. And he wakes up and his roommate is there carrying his bags. And he's like, I told you I'm done. I'm leaving Yiddishkeit. I'm leaving Judaism. I said, no, I just want to help you go to the bus. Make sure you're okay. It's like, if that's Yiddishkeit, I'm staying. It was just one simple act, one act that no one really realized it made an impact, of just offering to help carry a suitcase. But it really did wonders, and I can't imagine a world without Ari Kaplan. Just such a profound individual. Just Goldman Loewy's translation to English from Ladino, which is a major operation. That's when you're trying to do it authentic. And he had a whole team, different translators, and he also had a terrible handwriting. One of the things that someone would tell me is that your handwriting is terrible, but Ari Kaplan always wrote by typewriter. So there are people who he has a sefer called Light the Way, which is about Chasidus. One of the things from there that really struck to me was that he was talking about everyone has their inner darkness and their outer darkness. Everyone's going to have a situation, everyone's going to have a struggle, everyone's going to have a trying time. But what are we going to do from that trying time? Where I would say towards the end, I know in Canada, there's still lockdowns, stuff like that. But in New York, we're kind of towards the end. If you're vaccinated and could basically do anything at this point, just so I know it's the same there. But what I would say is that we went through trying time, and if we took nothing out of it, it was like just a waste of a year. I found my davening became a lot slower, and I wouldn't say slower in the I wouldn't say that I wasn't saying all the words, because I was, but I would say more of, did I really understand what I was saying? Did I really know what I was saying? And in fact, it was very hard for me, as I'm sure others with a similar, if not a same struggle, to go back to shul, to go back to the basic Knesses, and just to go back to what you would call regular life. So it's definitely changing an aspect. Shul is definitely quieter. Environment is definitely more respectful. And then you have just some people who just want to go back to normal, just want to talk in the middle of davening or do things which are not really so accepted. And although people kind of brush it off, now it's more like, dude, what are you doing? Like, did you take nothing out of the fact that we were stuck at home? We literally had our own, I don't want to say Malcolm, we literally had a Magesa for a good year and a half, and it's still ongoing. Got no fooling anyone. We all have our struggles, and we all together as an when we're struggling. These are our sags and double Friedman was also Nifter. Someone who I knew personally, my great aunt is a Shiskow. She's still alive. She's a great granddaughter. Her husband and my sister and my grandmother are brother and sister. It's very interesting because he became more of a black hat individual, my great uncle Annie, and my grandmother was in Teaneck. I would say more of a NCSY family. And I would say both families are very much the same. The conviction to Judaism, their connection to God. So you could have a completely different background. That their family, the Greer family, was a very Mizrahi family, and yet, my great uncle married a Shiskow, Feinstein Mishracha, who very different. And Rav Moshe had his own views, and we're not really here to talk about Zionism or not Zionism, but Rav Moshe had his own views. But the point was just that he knew people had other views. My great grandmother was the president of the Mizrahi at the time, and she's marrying off to a Feinstein, who was considered one of the most Haredi Rosh Yeshiva, and his son was already known. Rav David was already known as a voice in the Haredi Aguda world. And if this was today, sure the media would be all over it, all the Jewish media. How could this happen? How could the point is that we all might come from a different background, but if we really wanted to have Yahat and really wanted to love each other like we love ourselves, it's easier said than done. It's definitely something that we could do. And sorry for rambling on. Floor is open for questions.
Okay, so while we wait for a few more people just to come up with stuff, I want to just focus back on 2 points you said. The first about your background and just acceptance in general. I think that's so important because today we live in such a world of boundaries and definitions, and if you think like this, then you can't associate it with that, or you think like that, you can't associate it with this, stuff like that. So I think that that's an important reminder just to remember that things don't have to be mutually exclusive. As Dr. Rivka Press-Schwartz at SAR taught me, you can walk and chew gum. And she says that quite often. And that's something that's really stuck with me, that things aren't mutually exclusive, that you could, and it's not where you start, it's where you end up. And I think that that's an important lesson to take away. And to circle back onto the discussion about Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, what he accomplished in his lifetime was beyond. We're talking about a physicist, a Torah scholar, a Kippur pioneer. I mean, I read the first volume, I learned the first volume of Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's Handbook of Jewish Thought. And to see all the sources he quotes, and take in mind that this is the days before the internet. He actually looked all of them up, had all the sources, and then wrote them down. And there must be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of sources just in that one book alone. I mean, we haven't scratched the surface of who Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan was, or really who any of these great individuals were. And so that's one thing to be said, but it's also true that we haven't scratched the surface of the greatness that we have within. And we're always striving to find that, and we're always striving to grow. So I think that that's a powerful lesson too, that even after their deaths, we can't know, or we can't search, or we can't fully grasp the greatness of these holy, incredible individuals that changed the face of the Jewish world. But in our lifetimes, we have to realize that that same potential that's within them, that's buried within each and every one of us as well. So if anyone has any other questions or comments or things they want to say on me.
Yeah, sorry I was late. I had a comment actually talking about different backgrounds, and I have a favorite Torah based on Meraglim from Shlomo Carlebach, talks about how each person is about, you have to look beyond the garments. The clothing is the beged, like boged. You have to take off the garments, and then it's just a person underneath. No matter what you wear, what you dress, it's all about judging clothing garments. You have to remove the garments. If that makes sense, see?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Sorry, Yitzchok.
It's all right.
I said the wrong name.
It's all right. Not the first time. It actually makes a lot of sense. Everyone has a person could wear a blue shirt or white shirt, and yet they could have a similar, if not the same, connected to Hashem. And there's someone in my shul who recently got a haircut, but he for many years came in with a ponytail. Original was just for shunning Yom Kippur, and so because his father was in shul all the time, was someone who obviously strayed. It started being every single Shabbos. Went that 1 week, I think it was the week before our shul closed, week right after Purim, that Shabbos, we managed to stay open and moved outside on the backyard for every tefillah. And Friday night was moved from, I think it was 7 o'clock to 6:15. That's so it would be lighter out. And this guy was like, I missed davening. How could I have missed davening? This is
remind you of a story. I have a
Go for
kid
it.
in yeshiva. Went to my yeshiva for a little, but he's a Munkach. He comes from Munkach. He one time missed tefillin. I remember he told me he was missed tefillin. He was crying. He went to the Aron Kodesh. He did a whole thing. He's like, just from missing one tefillah, he cried over it. I'm not saying he was chassidish, but he cried just from one davening. Well, it's about consistency. He's crying, but crying with the measure of slow. It says, while crying, don't stop being happy within the cryingness, because you have to bury within there has a spark of happiness. You have to have a spark of happiness, because if you're too broken, then there won't be another spark to come. of happier.
Couldn't
Too
couldn't have
focused on
said that
the
better
bad.
myself. I could have not
Sorry
said
if
that
I
better
brought too much
myself.
of deep. If I brought too much deep stuff in.
Not a problem. I actually love it. Yeah. I couldn't have said that better myself. That definitely. 100% agree.
Kyle.
All right. Anyone else? Never feel angry at Hashem. I think that's a humanistic trait. I think everyone, I would say yes, and I think that's just cool being human. Everyone has their time and their moment where they're upset, they're angry, and they're like, God, why did you do this? And why did you not do that? And, everyone has their difficulties. We are all human beings. I would say as human beings, we all, I don't think it has anything to do with my background, but I think everyone at one point or another has their sense of getting angry at God. For me personally, my situation, and on top of being bullied throughout school, which I would say Zav was one of 3 friends that really stood by my side going to dark. I was one of the only positives of switching from a co-ed school to a more Haredi school, meeting someone like Zav, who was a rock and a foundation, and someone who I really grew from, someone who I'm friends with until this day. It's really surrounding yourself with the right crowd. But yeah, I have, me, like everyone else here, has definitely gotten angry at Hashem at times. That's a very human. What are your goals and plans in the future? Obviously taking it day by day, but I hope to inspire more people. I always had a dream of opening a school for basically more of like a base matters type environment. I always felt that if there was a base matters type environment from first grade and up, as silly as it sounds, kindergarten was like in the back of the base madrash, and everyone's in the same room. Yes, you could still have your quote unquote people, special needs, and people who need to learn slower like I did. But if everyone's in the same room, I think there would be a lot less judgments. Again, this is a dream and definitely not a realistic plan, but I think we're all allowed to have dreams, and one day dreams could get to fruition. I mean, I made it this far, so who knows? But that's how I would answer that to Ari.
Okay, so just circling back again to something you said previously and talking about how really getting angry with Hashem is a human characteristic. I saw something beautiful from Josh Greyjour today, who actually, he was asking for a source for this, but the lesson itself is profound, and then people responded that it's actually found within the Sfar Mikdoshim, tangentially related to the Zar, and to some of the Sefer Chasidus. And he said, if he was asking if anyone knows a Mefarish that explains Es Lehav Es Lisno in Koheles as referring to times when we feel love and hate towards Hashem. And so what he's saying here, which I think is mind-blowing when I actually sat down to think about it a bit, the pasuk Es Lehav Ve'es Lisno, that there's a time for hate and there's a time for love. And so he suggested, or he asked if there's anyone that suggests that this pasuk, that there's a time for love and a time for hate, is referring to our relationship with God. And I think that in and of itself is the fundamental point we're speaking about here.
Yeah. Ami?
Yeah, so adding to Kyle, it's the whole idea about the share relationship. The what I talked about before about having anger and all those emotions, it's a way of channeling them. Like it's like being angry, not like angry like like breaking things, but angry like in a way of holy stubbornness, I would call it.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I think the exact second, I'm actually, like I said earlier, I'm into music. Ani heavily be air quality fact, which is in church in my sleep, but my heart awakes the sound of my beloved knocks, and they say. definitely one of mine too. And they say that that has to do with our relationship with Hashem. It's like a bride and groom.
Yep.
That Hashem is waiting for us. Hashem is sleeping, but he's still waiting for the knocks of our people. See, open to me. Right? See, Thomas, see, my companion, my pigeon, my pyramid. And in a sense, it's the back and forth between us and the Rabbanu Shalom. One of the things that one of my favorite Chamish goals I see is from Korean Publishing, which commentary with someone from Rav Sachs, and like anything he touched was gold. Where that it's a dialogue between Hashem and us, so it's like going back and forth, and Go House works the same way. And so it's actually a dialogue. Say open to me. It's Hashem saying to us. It was something where I see Thomas see my partner, my pigeon, purity, I sleep, my heart awakes. It's us. God is in Kodito Sack. The sound of my precious B'nai Yisrael is knocking. The more we knock, the more answers we get. The more we knock, the more of a closeness and a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu we get. And I think that's really how we understand the relationship between us and God. As hard as it is to understand, he's someone who we cannot see. In a sense, our neshamos is also something we cannot see, and yet we have somehow accepted, that is part of us. Another question from I. Weber. If you could change the world in one major way, what would it be? I would say, if I could change the world in one way, would be that people would be more accepting, would be more. I just think the world would be a better place. And I'm not saying Jewish, I'm saying everybody. If everyone was just accepting one another, there'd be less anti-Semitism. There would be less attacks on Israel. There would be, who knows, maybe we would have be some good already. I would say within the Jewish world that, you know me too well. I would say within the Jewish world that one that the infighting would come to an end. One of the saddest headlines is from the 1980s when Samar and Lubavitch had a war within each other. Why do we need to go to physical violence? Everyone has their own darach, everyone has their own way. It's something my cousin and I speak about a lot, that he kind of went to a more Taimani darach. Yeah. $6:00, 6:20 chakras. What?
Yeah, so just while Yitzchok is responding to that, I know that his cousin Josh, I've had a few back and forth with myself. He's a very staunch supporter of Rabbi Yossi Mizrahi, Rabbi Aaron Reuven, people I don't necessarily see eye to eye with, people who have called out some of the speakers and personalities that we spoke about tonight, like Rabbi Sachs, like Rabbi from Goldberg. And so we don't necessarily see eye to eye, but that's okay too. And we've spoken about working through our differences. And the bottom line is that at the end of the day, we recognize that there are differences. I think that at least the people on the Zoom here recognize that we can accept people who are different than us. And that's how we move forward and create Judaism and really a world that's a better place and a place for all of us.
100%. Yeah. He is a big supporter of Yosef Mizrahi and Rabbi Aaron Reuven. I don't think this is the right form to say my personal opinion, but I'll say it anyway. Profound scholars like Rabbi from Goldberg and Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Definitely. I don't understand either, but I do have work in the morning. Definitely did not deserve to be attacked in the way they did, but at the same time, they are very staunch in their beliefs in Judaism, and I give them a lot of credit. I do think that a lot of their comments do make sense. If you listen with an open mind, you actually might learn something. A lot of their, and again, I'm not trying to be controversial here, one of the comments that Rabbi Mizrahi made about breast slaves, which is that one of the struggles that I had with the whole Uman thing. One of the things that still don't make sense to me is that if we are a people, and again, it's open to interpretation. I respect Breslov a lot. It's great. But and things that always bothered me was how could you leave your family on a holy day such as Rosh Hashanah? It never made sense to me. And I guess when you're in a close-knit family, that's never going to make sense. And that's something I definitely understood. This is someone who I respect, but I really never really wanted to listen to a share of his. When I did, I actually felt that even though I don't agree with a lot of what he says, a lot of what he says and what Rabbi Aaron Reuven says, a lot of it actually does make sense, and some of it doesn't make sense at all. But if you cut the garbage, you definitely will hear something positive. Any more questions? If not, I guess we could call it a night.
Okay, so I think we'll call it a night here. Thank you, Yitzchok. Thank you, everyone who asked questions. I mean, this was another tremendous opportunity, and I look forward to seeing everyone next week as well as tomorrow night for our special shir with Rabbi Yossi Ben Shushan. And again, thank you all so much for joining. It was really an incredible night. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Yitzchok directly. If you don't have his number, I'm happy to give and put you in contact. And yeah, so thank you all for joining, especially those who are in the US and might be a little freer than the rest of us. Thank you for still making the time for us, and look forward to seeing you all sometime soon.